Hello all, welcome to my YouTube channel. So in today video, we are going to discuss top 4 CICD most asked interview questions and answers. So let's move to our first question. So the very first question here, how do you manage a secrets in a CICD pipeline? Maybe before that they could ask you what is CICD pipeline, then you can simply tell the definition what it is basically, but I'm not going on that particular part. So I'm just focusing here about managing secrets. So you can tell interviewer there are many ways which we can use to utilize or we can manage our secrets in our CICD pipeline. So the very first thing which you can use is called a use secret management tool. So there are many secret management tool is available on the market. Even every cloud provider has their own secret management tool which you can utilize. So the very first thing, if we talk about Microsoft, then we have a Azure Key Vault, which you can use to store your database credentials, your APIs keys, your certificates. Second, we have Hasiko Vault. Then we have a AWS Secret Manager, which is Amazon Cloud. So like that, basically, these are the tools which we can use to secure our credentials or our confidential data in a secret management tool. So this is the one way which we can use. So here basically I have given a simple example of how basically we need to enable. For example, I have taken here Azure Key Vault. So it next question he can ask, okay, how do you integrate Azure Key Vault within your Azure DevOps pipeline? So you can simply tell there is a feature called library in Azure DevOps where basically we will create a variable group, and in the variable group we will link our Azure Key Vault or we will integrate Azure Key Vault, and with the help of task, like for example this is a task here, if you can see Azure Key Vault, with the help of task during the runtime we can fetch the value of our secrets whatever we have stored. So this is the one way using secret management tool you can utilize or you can sorry store your credentials or your confidential data on these particular tools. Now see what's the another options. So another option we have using environment variables. So environment variables also can securely store your secrets within the CI/CD pipeline. So for this basically again you have a multiple options. Basically again you can use pipe variable groups, and or if you don't want to use a variable group you can use a pipeline variables, but pipeline variable will be specific to that particular pipeline which you are conferring. But if you are using a variable group it will be a centralized, and then you can basically create a tokens of those particular credentials which you want to create basically which you want to store in your variable group or in a pipeline variable. And there is an option also for if I'll talk about Azure DevOps, there is an option where you can mask your credentials as well. So here basically I have given an example of GitHub Action. So GitHub Action also provide a facility to store your secrets and variables in GitHub basically. So for that basically you have to go to GitHub settings, and from there you can see an option called secrets and variable, and under that option you will see a action. So there you can create a variable, and if you can see here basically we are during the runtime basically we are fetching the value credentials which we have stored. So if you can see this is the like format right secrets.db dot underscore username. So the value will be stored in GitHub Action in this particular case. If you are using Azure pipelines and Azure DevOps, basically in that case you can utilize a feature for variable group or pipeline variables as well. So this is the another option to manage or to handle secrets in your CI/CD pipeline. Let's see what is the another option we have. So another option is called dynamic secret injection using managed identity. So in Azure, basically, managed identity basically allow the Azure DevOps pipeline agent, because every pipeline basically utilize a agent. It could be your self-hosted agent. Most of the companies use self-hosted agent because they have a complete control on it. Basically, they can basically they can assign permission on role based and all. So limited user will have access on those things. So with the help of managed identities also you can inject your secrets during the runtime. So for that basically what you have to do, you have to assign a managed identity to the particular agent which we are using. Or another option, you can create a Azure DevOps service connections as well. And from with the help of these particular thing, you can fetch the values during the runtime. So these are the basically three options you can tell to your interviewer. Now let's move to the another question. Now this is a very interesting what I could topic. So how would you implement the blue-green deployment in your CI/CD pipeline? So first, I think you have to or you should tell about the what is actually a blue-green deployment. Then you will start telling how can you implement it. So basically, a blue-green deployment, it is a deployment strategy which basically allow to like deploy the latest version of the application without any downtime. So in blue green deployment, we have two environments. One is called blue environment, which is basically represent the current or a live environment where basically whatever the application you have deployed, that will be a stable version of your application. And the green environment basically where you host the new version which you want to test and then you want to deploy to the production environment. So in green deployment, first you will tell the definition what it is, then what is blue environment and what is green environment. Then you will start telling, okay, now these are the base where which basically or these are the major step which is required to implement a blue green deployment in your CI/CD pipeline. So the very first thing you can tell, we need a two identical environment. It may basically two identical server we need it, because one server will act as a blue environment or blue server, and another environment or another server will act as a green environment. This is the very first requirement. Then you will deploy the new version to the green environment. Then you do the testing on the green environment. Once the testing will be passed, then you will switch the traffic from your blue environment to the green environment using a traffic manager. For example, if you are using Azure Kubernetes, in that case you can use nginx ingress controller as well, and application Azure traffic manager as well can help on this. And then you will basically do a monitoring of your green environment, and in case if you find any issues, you can roll back to the previous version. In this case, basically rollback, again you will switch the traffic from green to blue environment where you have the stable version of your application. So like that, basically you can tell the steps. These are the steps basically to need to create or to implement a blue green deployment in your CI/CD pipeline. Again, for that you have to create a complete your CI/CD pipeline, because the continuous integration part you have to set up your all the like if you are using containerizations, that thing you can tell, okay, first we need to build our code, then we have to do code analysis, then we have to create a Docker image, then we have to push the Docker image to your container registry. So like that, basically there are uh, complete step of your pipeline. So I have already prepared a video on my channel about the blue green deployment. If you are interested, you can go and watch that particular video, and it will give you a complete overview of your blue green deployment pipeline configuration as well. Now let's move to our third questions. Now, what is Canary deployment and how is it implemented in CI/CD? So basically, Canary and Blue Green deployment both are something I would say similar kind of deployment strategy, but in blue or green deployment, we directly switch the traffic from blue to green environment. What in Canary, we don't completely switch like all the traffic to the particular environment. Here, basically, what we do, we will progressively do the traffic on the particular environment. So basically, Canary deployment is a progressive release strategy where a new version of an application is rolled out to a small subset of users initially. Once the testing or once the user will get a feedback, okay, it's working fine, then we slowly uh, switch the traffic or slowly move the traffic to the particular percentage of users. For example, you have to, again in this particular case also, you need a two identical servers. So what you will do, basically you will do a deployment of like B1 in one environment and version V2 in another environment. So you will like firstly you will maybe 25% of your traffic will go to the version 2 where you have deployed the latest version. Then slowly you will increase the percentage on that particular environment or particular servers. But end of the day, Once you have like you will see, okay, all of your functionality, all the features are working fine. Then we completely switch the traffic to particular environment which is we have deployed latest. Now we will see steps also. So again, we have two versions of your application, like V1 and V2, so two servers. So the V1 version will be your stable version, and V2 version will be Canary versions, the new version which will be deployed. And these versions can run on separate servers, different deployment slots, and separate Kubernetes pod or services. So it is not necessary you have to create like two AKS cluster. You can utilize the feature called namespace. That thing also you can mention to save the cost as well. And you can use a deployment slot if you are using, or if you are deploying your application to the Azure app servers, because this is a very generic question. So you can, from your side itself, you can give 2 3 examples. Okay, if we are using Azure app service, then we utilize the feature called deployment slots. If we are using Azure Kubernetes, then maybe you can utilize the feature called namespaces, so we can segregate two environments or segregate the pods for V1 and V2. And then we will do a routing of a small percentage of traffic to the Canary version, which is V2 in our case. Then with the help of load balancer, traffic manager, or ingress controller, we will direct the traffic to the small subset of user to the Canary version, where which is we have version 2. Then we will monitor the Canary version, and slowly we will increase the traffic on the Canary version. If everything is working fine, then we will completely increase, like we will see fully 100% traffic will be on Canary version. And in case if is there an issue, we can roll back. So these are the steps which you can say. Now let's see what's the another question we have here. So the fourth question, how do you implement a security in CI/CD pipeline? So again, this is also a very important questions which mostly you will see in your interview, because the security in your CI/CD pipeline is not a single task. Like from starting of writing your code to deployment of your code, and after deployment also we have to keep everything uh, in basically in a particular consistent way. Like okay, if we are writing a source code, application code, that part also need a security implemented. So the very first thing you can say is source code, because we are not going to write any application code, because as a DevOps we have to implement a security in a CI/CD pipeline. So the very first thing you can say, we will start from a securing source code itself, which is our repository where our application code will be there. So we can restrict the access using the role-based access control. Who can edit, who can merge, or so who can edit the application code. So we will implement the restrictions using role-based access to our source code application, or I would say Azure repos. Then in Azure repositories, we will be having a multiple branches, like main branch, for feature branch, maybe hotfix branch, or any other branches. So we will enable a particular branch policies over there. So if, like for example, if we are merging from branch to or feature branch to a main branch, then there should be a proper approvals in place. There will be a reviewers. So all these things we have to enable at a branch level else also. So our the repository will be secure. So basically we are securing our source code here. Next, manage secret securely. So in your application code, you should not hard code any values. Either could be DB name, DB password, APIs, certificates. Nothing should be hard coded. So everything should be managed in a secure location. So the very first thing, second thing, security of your connection string maybe. So manage secret securely. Third, use secure dependencies, because when we write our application, we use multiple open source sometimes dependencies which is required for our application. So in that case, we also need a tool to detect if we have any vulnerabilities on those dependencies as well. So for that we have a tool called uh, dependent board and white source and cynic. So all these tool which can help you to identify in case if you have any vulnerabilities in your libraries or in your dependencies. And we should also regularly update dependencies to the latest version, because every DLL or every open source libraries which we use, they always sorry, they always release a latest version. So we should also considering upgrading the latest version for our dependencies. So this is we talk about application code perspective, like repos perspective. Now the fourth point, you can say validate inputs and output. What does it mean basically? So basically, in your application code, if you have not analyzed your code, like if for example here, static application security testing and dynamic application security testing. So for this also we need to use tool called SonarQube, Checkmarks, OSHAP, JAP. These are the tools which you can mention into your interviews. Okay, if you can feel like there are SQL injection or cross-site scripting attacks, you can restrict with the help of these tools as well. Then for fifth point, basically isolate environments. This is why we need it, because if one environment is compromised, it should not impact other environments. So all the infrastructure, like for dev environment, the infrastructure should be different. Like your container registries will be different. Your deployment, it could be Azure App Service or AKS, there will be different. Then how basically we can secure this particular thing? So obviously we need a separate resources for all the environments, and we need to grant a least privilege to our pipeline agent, because the pipeline agent is the one which execute all the task for our application or our deployment. And obviously we should consider self-hosted agent instead of Azure hosted agent. So fifth point, you can mention isolate environments. Sixth point, you can mention monitoring and audit pipeline, because pipeline auditing is also mandatory. If you see in your Azure DevOps, if you are using, there is a under organization setting, you have an option called pipeline auditing. So you can enable that one. So and you can set up some kind of alert if is there any unauthorized change or is there any build fail, then you can quickly check and fix it. Now let's see what's the seventh one. We have a secure the CICD infrastructure. So again, the infrastructure is also a very integral part, which basically the application will be deployed there. So that is also will be secure. So I'm not actually going to read all these things, because it's already there and you can read. So and eighth one, we have a perform regular security testing. So if you are using containerization for your application, then you should always check your Docker image which you are generating or which you are pushing to the container registries. That's you should also scan that your container image as well. And you also are on a time to time, basically you have to do a penetration testing on your system, like if is there any loopholes which we can fix, or maybe we can identify it, then we will fix. And next you can mention about multi-factor authentication, because the password, if you are putting for everything, like for if you are using database username and password, might be there are the password are like easily compromised. So instead of, you should have another options called multi-factor authentication. So whenever you log into your any tool, like it could be a database server, it could be your app server, there should be a another security layer called multi-factor authentication. Like it could be your mobile OTP, or it could be your mobile authenticator app. So like that basically you can mention. So these are the steps which you can mention in your interview process. So that's all for today. I hope it's clear. Like these are the basically most asked interviewer questions, because they basically tell you, okay, how much knowledge you have about CI/CD process if you mention all these points to your interviewer. So that's all for today. See you next video. Thank you so much.